Let's make our way to our seats, and we will get going this morning. My name is CJ Davis, and I play on the worship team and small group leader. Get to teach some classes here at Harvest. And Pastor Mike asked if some of us would like to preach this summer. And when I saw the list of available passages and that Exodus 32 was on the list, I think I emailed back in 30 seconds. I jumped all over it because of a couple of reasons, honestly. I'm really excited to get back into the narrative. We've spent some amazing weeks digging deep into instructions for the tabernacle, and it's been so good. But I'm ready for the story to pick back up. And that happens here in this chapter. So really excited to be back in the narrative. Also really excited about this chapter because I have the conviction that the biblical authors, they write in such a way that what seems like a speed bump or a hiccup or a riddle or a puzzle in the text is actually the author at work going, hello, pay attention, I'm trying to show you something. And this whole chapter is riddle after riddle after riddle after riddle. So I'm really excited to look at the author at work here and see what they're trying to teach us, what Yahweh is trying to teach us, what Moses is trying to teach us as we go through Exodus 32. Before we look at our particular chapter, I thought it'd be helpful to kind of refresh where we've been. So if we zoom out, we just finished these 7 divine speeches of tabernacle instructions. And Exodus 32 sits in the middle of a sandwich. These 7 divine speeches going from chapter 25 to 31 is all tabernacle instruction. And then after chapter 34 until the end of the book, Exodus 40, it's all construction of the tabernacle. And a lot of it's verbatim. We get the same things being referenced, but now they're being built. And the golden calf narrative is sitting right in the middle. And again, that's the author at work trying to signal us. And we'll talk about that this morning, about why it's important this story is sandwiched where it is in this latter half of the book of Exodus. So that's where we are kind of structurally, but also where we are in the story. So a lot's happened this far in Exodus, and we've seen Israel get delivered out of Egypt, through the Red Sea, the plagues, they had Passover, they went to the wilderness, they complained and screwed up a couple times, and miracles like water from a rock and manna and quail, all of that amazing stuff. Then they come to a mountain, and Israel is at the bottom of the mountain. Moses goes up to the top of the mountain to meet with Yahweh, this terrifying glory cloud that's at the top of the mountain. And that's where we left off. So before all of these tabernacle instructions that are like a break in the narrative, where we left off was Moses at the top of the mountain, Israel at the bottom. Joshua is somewhere in the middle. He said, hang out here, wait for me. And Moses had been gone for a little while. The narrative picks back up here in Exodus 32. And it's a big chapter. I mean, rabbis look at this chapter and say that this was Israel's fall. We read Genesis 3 as the fall narrative, and rabbis look at Exodus 32 and they say that was Israel's fall. It's a very significant chapter. It fundamentally alters the way that Yahweh interacts with Israel for the rest of the story. It's a big deal. And I get to talk about it with you this morning. I'm super excited about this. So what we're going to do this morning is I have 3 things that I want to do. And the first one is because of how familiar we are with the story, we actually run the risk of maybe misunderstanding or missing some of the things that's going on in the story. The golden calf narrative is a very famous story like Noah's Ark or the story of Jonah. It works really good on a felt board. But because we're so familiar with it, we run the risk of misunderstanding it. So what I want to do first is go through the story and try to make it strange for us again. Defamiliarize ourselves from the story. It's going to get uncomfortable. It's going to get weird. But I want to pull out all of the little puzzle pieces and all of the riddles and kind of lay them out on the table for us. After we've done that, we'll move into step 2, which is let's put it back together. Let's put these puzzle pieces back together and see if it gives us a cohesive picture. And by God's grace, we'll see that it does, and that it's a picture of the Messiah and our deep need for him. And lastly, we'll ask, so what? So what does this mean? Is this just story for story's sake? This is Torah, and Torah means instruction. So what are the biblical authors trying to teach us here? What is relevant for us here today as a church? So that's the plan. We're going to tear it apart, we're going to put it together, and we're going to ask, so what? That sound like an okay plan? Okay. We are going to dig in. First, I want to show you a basic structure of this chapter. It's pretty simple. There are 4 parts, and 2 of them mirror each other. You've got Aaron and the people first at the bottom of the mountain. Then the next scene is Moses and Yahweh at the top of the mountain. And then you got Moses and the people at the bottom of the mountain. And then Moses and Yahweh at the top of the mountain. So kind of like 1, 2, 1, 2. That's the arrangement of this chapter, and we're just going to take it bite by bite. We're going to go through each of these 4 sections, and I'm just going to ask some questions and highlight some of the puzzles. Our first section is the first 6 verses, and that's where the golden calf happens. The rest of it is about the fallout from the golden calf. So let's look at this first section with Aaron and the people, and I'm going to read and comment, make some observations. Exodus 32, verse 1. Now when the people saw that Moses had delayed to come down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and they said, "Arise, make us an Elohim who will go before us. Because this Moses, the man who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we don't know what's happened to him." Right off the bat, there's like 6 strange things that are happening here. Why are they going to Aaron? We just learned that Bezalel is the guy who's gifted in all craftsmanship. So if you need something made, why are you going to Aaron? Why aren't they going to Bezalel? Why does Moses' delay to come down the mountain make the people want to have Aaron make them something? What is it about Moses being gone that makes the Israelites go to Aaron and say, "We need you to make us something"? Why do they want him to make them an Elohim? Your translation might say God with a capital G, or it might say gods, multiple, with a lowercase g. The word's Elohim, and we'll talk about that this morning. Why describe Moses this way? This Moses, the man who brought us out from the land of Egypt? Just say Moses. In the Bible, if you're reading and you can tell the story with less words and it still makes sense, these extra words are the author at work. He's trying to make a point in describing Moses this way. This man, Moses, who brought us out from the land of Egypt. Moses brought them out from the land of Egypt? I thought it was Yahweh. What's going on here? Aaron said to them, "Tear off the gold rings that are in the ears of your wives, your sons, your daughters, and bring them to me." So all the people tore off the gold rings that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. And he took them from their hand, and he fashioned it with a graving tool and made it into a molten calf. And the people said, "This is your Elohim, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of it. And Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow will be a feast to Yahweh." So the next day they rose early and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and to drink and rose up to play. Why a calf? They asked for an Elohim. Like, it makes me wonder if Aaron is like terrible at whittling or something, and he's like, "Hey, you wanted an Elohim? Ta-da!" It's a calf, and then it's a molten calf. Why tell us that it's a molten calf? We know what happens to gold when you put it in a fire. Why tell us it's a molten calf? Puzzles. So, that's the first section. Handful of riddles. If we move on into the section where now we're at the top of the mountain with Moses and Yahweh, in verse 7, Yahweh speaks to Moses, "Go down at once for your people, whom you brought up from the land of Egypt." Oh, your people that you brought up from the land of Egypt. It makes me think of like 2 parents when one's had a really hard day with a kid and the other one comes to meet him and goes, "Man, you're not going to believe what your son did today." Like Yahweh's like distancing himself. They have corrupted. They've quickly turned aside from the way that I commanded them. They've made for themselves a molten calf and have worshipped it. Oh, we got a new element here. Now, Yahweh looks at what they're doing. He says, that's worship. And they've sacrificed to it, and they said, this is your Elohim, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. Yahweh said to Moses, I've seen this people. Behold, they are stiff-necked. Now, leave me alone. Let my anger burn against them so that I can destroy them all, and I'll start over with you and make you a great nation. Moses pleaded with the Lord, his God, and said, why are you mad? Which is a ridiculous question to ask Yahweh right now. Like, I just imagine Yahweh gesturing broadly to everything that's going on, and that's why he's mad. But Moses says, why does your anger burn against your people? Your people that you brought out of Egypt. You didn't just bring them out. It took some doing. With a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, you brought them out. What would the Egyptians think? Why is he bringing up the Egyptians right now? They would look at this and they say, it was evil that he brought them out to kill them in the mountains and destroy them from the face of the land. So turn from your burning anger and change your mind about doing harm to your people. Remember my ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, whom you swore by yourself and said to them, I'm going to give you a lot of kids, so many like the stars in heaven, and all of this land that I've spoken, I'm going to give to them, and they'll live there forever. So the Lord changed his mind about the harm which he said he would do to his people. Why is Moses bringing up the Egyptians, the patriarchs? More importantly, why does it work? So Yahweh changed his mind. We're starting to feel some of the puzzles and riddles that are in this text, maybe a little bit of discomfort, defamiliarizing ourselves from the story. We're going to move into the third section, which is the longest one and has the most riddles. So Moses turns down from the mountain with 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand, tablets which were written on both sides. They were written on one side and the other. The tablets were God's work, and the writing was God's writing, engraved on the tablets. What are we doing here? Why all of this language about the tablets? Just say Moses came down with the tablets. Again, this is the author at work, making a theological point. When Joshua heard the sound of the people, remember, Joshua's in the middle of the mountain. He's not part of the party. He says to Moses, man, it sounds crazy down there. It's like a war. Moses says, it's not the sound of the crying of victory, and it's not the sound of the crying of defeat. It's the sound of crying I hear, which is like a super normal way to respond. Riddles. It came about as soon as Moses came near the camp, he saw the calf and the dancing. Oh, now we have dancing. And Moses' anger burned, just like Yahweh's did. And he throws down the tablets from his hands and shattered them at the foot of the mountain. Well, who told him to do that? Has he gone rogue? He took the calf that they had made and he burned it with fire. And he ground it to a powder, scattered it over the face of the water. What water? And he made the sons of Israel drink it. What in the world? Moses said to Aaron, what did these guys do to you that you brought such a sin upon them? Aaron said, why are you mad? Same thing that Moses said to Yahweh. Don't let your anger burn. You know these people stink. They're prone to evil. They said to me, will you make us an Elohim to go before us? Because this Moses, the man who brought us out of Egypt, we don't know what's happened to him. So I said, anybody that's got gold, tear it off. They gave it to me. I cast it into the fire, and ta-da, out came this calf. What's Aaron doing here? Is he trying to distance himself? Is he just giving the Cliff's Notes? Because this is basically what happened. It's a strange response. Well, Moses saw that the people were running wild, for Aaron had let them run wild to be a derision among their enemies. He stood in the gate of the camp and said, whoever is for Yahweh, to me. And all the sons of Levi gathered together to him. And he says, thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, every man put your sword on your thigh, go back and forth between the camp, and kill every man his brother, every man his friend, every man his neighbor. When did Yahweh say that? Has Moses gone rogue? The sons of Levi did just as Moses instructed. and about 3,000 men of the people fell that day. Moses said, "Fill your hand today for the Lord, because every one of you has been against his son and against his brother, so that Yahweh may bestow a blessing upon you today." Apparently, what the Levites just did makes them fit to receive a blessing from Yahweh. On the next day, Moses said to the people, "You guys really screwed up. It's a great sin. I'm going to go up to Yahweh. Maybe I can make atonement for your sin." Lots and lots of puzzles. In the last section, Moses returns to Yahweh and says, "Man, this people, they really screwed up. They committed a great sin. They've made an Elohim of gold for themselves. But now, please, forgive their sin. And if not, wipe me out from your book." So Moses asks Yahweh to do something. Is Yahweh going to respond the same way he did the last time we saw this? Yahweh says to Moses, "No. Actually, anyone who sinned against me, I'm going to blot them out of my book. Now you go, lead the people where I told you. Behold, my angel will go before you." Now they're just the people. They were your people, right? And then Moses said, "No, they're your people." But now they're just the people. And where are they going? Are they going to the land flowing with milk and honey, the land of the patriarchs, the promised land? No, it's just the land I already told you about. It's a very cold response from Yahweh. And our passage ends with, "Nevertheless, in the day when I visit them, I will visit this sin upon them." And thus the Lord struck the people because of what they did with the calf which Aaron had made. All right, you guys see what I'm talking about when I say this is a chapter full of puzzles and riddles? Are we feeling the discomfort and the strangeness of this chapter? Yes? All right, let's close in prayer. Jesus, thank you for... I'm just kidding. That was round one. We have some of the puzzle pieces out on the table. We got to go back through. So we're going to go back through, and we're going to try to put the puzzle pieces back together. And there are clues hiding in plain sight that tip us off to what the author is trying to communicate to us. So let's go back to the top, and we're going to go through these 4 sections again, and we're going to try to put some of the puzzle pieces back together, okay? In this first section, why are they coming to Aaron? Well, he's Moses' right-hand man. He's the number 2, right? So you'd think the Israelites, they think Moses is probably dead. They see this terrifying glory cloud on the top of the mountain, and they're like, gosh, we haven't seen this guy in a really long time. So let's go to the vice president and say, hey, are you ready to take the reins and lead this people? But that's not what they do. They go to the number 2 one in command, and they ask him something strange. They're also just doing what Moses told them to do. Before Moses went up the mountain in Exodus 24, he tells the elders, if any of the Israelites have a matter that needs to be decided, let them go to Aaron. So they're doing what Moses told them to do. But they don't ask for what you think they might ask for. They say, make for us an Elohim. So why does Moses being gone make the people want Aaron to build for them an Elohim? It might help to talk about the word Elohim. We might be used to thinking of the word Elohim as like synonymous with Yahweh. It's another name for God, and it's not. It's a title. It's a category. The word Elohim is used to translate God with a capital G, gods, judge, ruler, power, authority. It has a wide semantic range. And they are asking Aaron to make for them an Elohim because Moses is gone. Why does Moses' delay make them want an Elohim? Who is Moses to the people? When they got to the mountain at first, Yahweh wanted them to come up and be with him, right? To dwell in his presence. And what happened? They got so freaked out that they said, nope, we're going to take our stand at the base of the mountain. Moses, you got to go. You got to be the go-between. You go talk to Yahweh for us, and Yahweh will talk to you, you talk to us. That way we can kind of worship Yahweh at a distance and maybe keep things a little bit in our control. Moses is the go-between. Moses might be dead, so what do they need? They need a new go-between. They go to Aaron and they say, we don't know what happened to Moses. So will you make for us something? Will you make for us an Elohim? Like, who's missing from the situation? Is Yahweh missing here? No. They can see Yahweh. The glory cloud is still on top of the mountain. It's thundering, it's lightning. They still see him. So Yahweh's not gone. They're not trying to replace Yahweh. Are the people missing? No. They're not trying to replace themselves. Is Aaron missing? No. They're not trying to replace Aaron. Who's missing? Moses. We don't know what happened to this man Moses, so make for us an Elohim. They wanted a new Moses. They wanted a new go-between. And it gets explicit when they qualify Moses as this man, Moses. If a guy like Moses, who led us out of Egypt, can be consumed and killed on this mountain, we need something maybe a little bit better than another man. We need an Elohim. We need a power. We need an authority. We need something that'll be able to be our go-between and not be consumed on the mountain. The people are worried that with Moses being gone, they are now totally exposed to all that Yahweh is. And it terrifies them. It's the same people who were terrified to go up the mountain. They want a bigger and better go-between. So why a calf? Why a calf? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and I think they're probably all at work as to why a calf. One of them is a young bull or a young ox is the exact same thing that Abraham had to sacrifice when Yahweh made a covenant with him. So maybe it's a picture of Yahweh's faithfulness to the covenant. A lot of the Egyptian gods are represented by a young bull or a young ox. And so it'd be a familiar image to them, something that they knew and were familiar with. But more importantly, and I think most strikingly, one of the four faces of the cherubim that are on the lid of the Ark of the Covenant is a bull or an ox. And we know from later reflection on the tabernacle that the Ark of the Covenant was Yahweh's throne. It's the thing that he sat on. It's what he rides. So this is a familiar image. It might picture Yahweh's faithfulness. It's his footstool. But why is it molten? Why is it a molten calf? The Hebrew word for molten is masecha, and it means mask or covering. Literally, it means mask or covering. The tabernacle has masecha in it. It has veils and coverings in it. So this calf is functioning as this new veil between Israel and the people, this new covering, this new thing for them to hide behind so that they can keep Yahweh at an arm's length. They're looking for a replacement Moses. And this calf is meant to be their new covering. At the top of the mountain, Yahweh says to Moses, your people. Why does he call them your people that you brought out of Egypt? Well, partly because it's true. You can do a word search for brought out of Egypt, and half of the hits are going to be, so Moses brought the people out of Egypt. The other half are Yahweh brought the people out of Egypt. Sometimes it's Moses, Yahweh said to Moses, you're going to bring the people out of Egypt. Sometimes it's the narrator saying, thus Moses brought the people out of Egypt. Sometimes it's him saying Yahweh brought them out. It's both. So he's not totally wrong, but you get this sense of distance that Yahweh is putting between himself and the people. Yahweh looks at what they're doing and he calls it worship. This mask, this covering, this calf that they demanded Aaron make them has become more than a go-between. It's become an idol. It's become something that they sacrifice to and that they worship. And so whatever you use to protect yourself from being totally exposed to all that Yahweh is for you will eventually become something you worship. Moses says to Yahweh, why are you angry? Which doesn't make any sense at all. It helps to know that there are two different words for why in Hebrew. And one of them is the why did this happen, like looking backwards. The why that we have here is lama, which means for what, or to what end. To what end are you angry? Why are you going to let your anger lead you to destroying this people? What's your anger going to do? Moses starts arguing with Yahweh, and he says, I'm not going to leave you alone. I'm going to bring up the Egyptians. I'm going to bring up the patriarchs. Why does he do this? What's his tactic here? Think about what the Egyptians would say. They see Yahweh do all of this stuff to the Egyptians and to Pharaoh, and he brings them out in the wilderness and just kills them out there. The Egyptians would say, man, that guy's worse than Pharaoh. I mean, Pharaoh changes his mind a lot. Yeah, you can take him. No, never mind. Tomorrow, yeah, you can leave. No, never mind. And Yahweh would look just as fickle, just as capricious as Pharaoh. Actually worse, because he would do all of this stuff to the Egyptians and to Pharaoh just to kill the people in the wilderness. So God's character, Yahweh's character is on trial here. And Moses knows that Yahweh made a promise. It said, when I bring you out of Egypt, the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So he says, remember your promise. And he brings up the patriarchs. It says, remember the promise that you made to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Israel. You gotta ask yourself the question, would Yahweh have been just to do what he said he was gonna do? Wipe out all of the Israelites and start over with Moses because of their great sin? Would he have been just to do that? The answer is resoundingly no. He would not be just because he made a promise. Yahweh made a promise that the descendants of the patriarchs would go to the promised land, would multiply, would dwell there, that he would be there with them. And if he wiped them all out and started over with Moses, he would be welching on his promises. Yahweh is a God who makes promises. And so Moses is saying, you've got to be a God of your word. And he holds Yahweh's feet to the fire of his own promises. It's less so that Moses is trying to get Yahweh to change his mind from something that he said he was going to do, but reminding Yahweh to do the thing he said he was going to do way back when. Bring your people into the promised land. Remember the promise you made. And so Yahweh changes his mind. When Moses goes down, remember our section with the most riddles, he's got these 2 tablets. We get all this language about these tablets. And there's 2 of them. They're written on both sides. And this highlights the tragedy of what Moses is about to do with these tablets in shattering them. I mean, the reason that there's 2 tablets and written on both sides, one on one side and one on the other, is because, like, have you ever filled out a legal document where there's like the white paper and underneath is the yellow one that transfers the ink some magically, and then you get one and I get the other? That's how ancient Near Eastern covenants worked. You would write the same thing on both tablets. One party would get one party would get the other. And that's what Moses has here. And they're going to live in the Ark of the Covenant where Yahweh's throne is. And he shatters them. Moses shatters them. He says, look, Yahweh's not going to destroy you, but you're not his people anymore. Relationship's over. Covenant is broken. He called you my people. You're not his people anymore. He called you my people. The relationship is shattered. And why does the dancing put Moses over the edge? Think about the last time we saw dancing. Exodus 15, when Miriam leads the people in dancing. It's the exact same word. They've just experienced this amazing deliverance out of Egypt through the sea, and they are worshiping Yahweh and dancing, and Moses looks at this and says, it's too much for me to bear. They're doing the exact same thing in front of this golden calf that they did in front of Yahweh. Relationship is over. And then why does he make them drink the calf? Why does he grind it up, mix it with water, and make them drink it? Well, let me introduce you to the worst law in the Torah, and it's Numbers 5, verses 11 through 31. And it is the test for jealousy. Long story short, if an Israelite husband is suspicious of his wife, that she's been unfaithful, he can take her in front of the elders and write down what he thinks she's done on a piece of paper, tear it up, burn it, mix the ashes with water, stir it up, and make her drink it. If she gets sick and her, quote, thigh falls away, which is a lovely Hebrew phrase, then she's guilty and they kill her. If she doesn't get sick, then she lives and they can go home. If you want to know more about this law, talk to Mike. What I will say is we have zero record of this ever being done in the life of Israel. We have the law, but we have no instance of this ever happening in the entire Bible except for the one we just read. This is the test for jealousy. Moses is suspicious of Yahweh's bride being unfaithful and going after a foreign Elohim. And so he takes the golden calf, which is his indictment against them, and grinds it up, mixes it with water. What water? The only water around is the water that's miraculously flowing from the rock a couple chapters ago. And he makes the Israelites drink it. And do they get sick? Yeah. they're guilty. The people are running wild. What's going on with the people running wild? You would think that seeing the tablets get shattered, establishing that the relationship is over, you're no longer the covenant partner, and your Elohim is smashed and destroyed, and you drank it, that might sober them up a little bit and lead them to repentance. But apparently, they're still running wild. At least 3,000 of them. 3,000 of them, even after seeing the tablets be destroyed, even after being forced to drink their idol, are continuing to run loose, to run wild. And it's at that point that Moses gathers together the Levites. This puts Moses over the edge, and he actually fulfills Exodus 22:20, a previous law that all of the people heard that said, anyone that sacrifices to a foreign Elohim other than Yahweh is to be completely destroyed. So Moses here is doing what Adam and Eve should have done in the garden. Adam and Eve were given the command to rule, subdue, and have dominion over all the earth, including the inhabitants of the garden. And who is in the garden? The serpent. They're supposed to subdue the serpent. And they didn't. And things go off the rails. Here we have a new garden moment. Yahweh and the people, they're meeting together. They just had this covenant ceremony. We got these instructions for a house for them to live together in. It's this amazing marriage ceremony. And Moses says, there's a snake in our midst. And he removes from the people those that are continuously rebellious and refuse to repent. On the next day, Moses ascends to Yahweh. In verse 20. Verse 20. On the next day, Moses said to the people, you've committed a great sin. I'm going to go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement. How many days is that? Day 1, the people wonder where Moses is. Aaron says, on the next day, there's going to be a feast to Yahweh. And Moses here says, on the next day, I'm going to ascend to Yahweh to try and make atonement for your sin. I mean, you got a guy that's rising on the third day to make atonement for the people. Come on. It's too good. And what does he ask Yahweh to do? He says, will you forgive the people? His specific request is, will you forgive the people? And if you're not willing to forgive them, you can't go forward with your plan. You can't wipe them out and start over with me. I'm throwing in my hat with the Israelites. You're going to have to wipe me out too. And the word for forgive here is nisa, and it means to lift up, to bear, to carry. Moses says to Yahweh, will you bear this sin? Will you carry their sin? And if you're not willing to do that, you got to wipe me out too. And how does Yahweh answer? Not the same way he did before. He says, no, I'm going to blot anyone who sinned against me out of my book. Well, what book? What book did we just get a whole bunch of details that it was written by God on both sides? The book of the covenant. It's God's rescue plan for the cosmos. He says, I'm going to blot them out. They sinned against me. This is an instance where the language is subtle but brutal. Yahweh says, go lead the people, not my people, not your people, the people, to the land that I already told you about. Not the promised land, not flowing with milk and honey, just, I already told you about it. And I'm not even going to go with you. I'm going to send a messenger. And I'm really, really glad that the story doesn't end with Exodus 32. Because Exodus 33 and Exodus 34, we'll see that Moses basically responds to Yahweh's response and says, that's not good enough. He continues to hold Yahweh's feet to the fire of his own promises, and eventually Yahweh totally relents. He forgives the people, he reestablishes the covenant, he brings them to the promised land, he fills the tabernacle, he goes with them. So I'm really thankful for Exodus 33 and Exodus 34, because if it ended here, it would be a major bummer. But the last verse says, nevertheless, in the day when I visit, I will visit them with this sin upon them. Your translation might say punish or appoint or count, and the Hebrew word there is pakad, and it means all of those things. And it means to visit. So when Yahweh visits the people, he's going to visit this sin upon them. Well, what is this sin? What is the thing that they demanded to have? They demanded to have a mask, a separation, a covering, something between them and Yahweh. And Yahweh says, okay, I'm going to give you what you want. You demanded to have a separation, you demanded to have a mask, and now every time I draw near, you're going to be reminded of this separation. So much so that only one of you is going to be able to enter in one day a year. You'll be regularly reminded of the separation that you demanded to have. And this is what the Lord strikes the people with, this separation, because of what they did with the mask, with the calf, with the covering that Aaron had made. So hopefully we're seeing these puzzle pieces come back together where Moses is gone as far as they know, and they're totally exposed to Yahweh. So they need a new Moses. They need a new covering, something to go between them, to stand between them and Yahweh, lest they be totally exposed to Yahweh. And they end up worshiping that thing. And Moses starts to barter with Yahweh, holding Yahweh's feet to the fire of his own promises. And Yahweh relents. He doesn't destroy the people, but the covenant is broken. And then he says he's not going to forgive the people and he's not going to go with them. But tune in next week for Exodus 33 and Exodus 34, where we see God ultimately saying, okay, you win, Moses. I'll go with you. You're my people. The covenant is back on. So what? So what does this mean for us? What is the biblical author trying to teach us here? And I really have two things, and they make the big idea. I didn't forget. I have a big idea. It's at the end, so I didn't totally mess up. We become like what we worship, and our prayers matter. That's what the text is trying to teach us, that we become like what we worship, and our prayers matter. Something really amazing happens in this passage in the description of Israel after they worship the golden calf. Yahweh looks at them and he says, they are stiff-necked. They are running wild. They're let loose. They have to be gathered in the camp. They have quickly turned aside from the way, which are all terms used to describe young bull and oxen in the rest of the Bible. Israel is a picture of a calf that has to have a yoke on its neck because it doesn't want to go where the master is turning it, and it quickly leaves the way, and it rises up to play. Israel is becoming like what they worship. Not only that, they experience the consequences of the thing that they worship. What happened to the golden calf? It got smashed and destroyed and totally consumed by the Israelites. What happened to those that continued to worship the golden calf? They got totally destroyed and consumed by the Israelites. This sets a pattern for the rest of the Bible of how Israel is characterized as a rebellious calf. Hosea 4:16 and 17 comes right out and says it. It says, Israel is a rebellious ox, and I will leave them alone. It's a summary of this passage. Psalm 115 says, they've made idols that have eyes that don't see, ears that don't hear, mouths that don't speak, and those who make them become like them. Jeremiah 2:5 says, they pursued vanity and became vain. So we become like what we worship, and we experience the consequences of the things that we worship. So if you worship money, if money functions for you as your covering, the thing that lets you kind of worship Yahweh at a distance and keep him at arm's length, if you worship money, you're going to become like money. And what's money like? It gets used by people. It gets used for dishonest gain. It only has value because we all got together and said, hey, that green piece of paper means something. So if you worship money, you're going to become like money. You're going to be used by people. You're going to be used for dishonest gain. You're going to think that your value only comes from outside of yourself and not the intrinsic worth of being an image bearer of Yahweh. We become like what we worship. The New Testament authors, they look at this and they say, yeah, but that's a feature, not a bug. Paul in 2 Corinthians 3:18 says, we all with unveiled face, which is tying into what happens with Moses needing to veil his face later. We all with unveiled face are beholding the glory of God in the face of Christ, and we are being changed from one degree of glory to the next. So we become like what we worship. Get your eyes on Jesus. And if you want to know what Jesus looks like, read the Gospels. See what he does. Read the stories. Get your eyes on him. Worship him and become like him. If you want to see Jesus, look around you. Paul said, this is the body of Christ. He's the head. This is the body. So you want to see Jesus, look at the amazing things that people around you are doing and imitate them. Paul says, be an imitator of me as I am of Jesus. We become like what we worship. So get your eyes on Jesus. And our prayers matter. Moses holds Yahweh's feet to the fire of his own promises. And it says Yahweh changed his mind from the harm that he said he was going to do to the people. Your prayers matter. So pray the promises. Hold Yahweh's feet to the fire of his own promises in your life. Yahweh, I believe that you said you were going to complete the good work that you began in me. So give me victory over this sin that I can't seem to shake. Yahweh, you said you give us the ministry of reconciliation, so help me forgive this person that I can't stand to think about right now. Yahweh, you said that you don't delight in the death of a single wicked person, so Yahweh, stop these wars. Yahweh, you said you delight and desire for everyone to be saved, so save my best friend. Don't end your prayers with, but. Don't give yourself an out. Don't give Yahweh an out. Hold Yahweh's feet to the fire of his own promises. We become like what we worship. So get your eyes on Jesus. And our prayers matter. So pray the promises. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you so much for your word and for all that you are for us. We're so thankful that we have Jesus as our high priest, this great mediator, the God-man. We draw near to you through him and by the power of the Spirit. Thank you for your word. I pray that you help us to look to you and be changed by what we see, to become more and more like you, Jesus. And help us to believe. Jesus, you told us to pray, asking as though we've already received the thing we're praying for. Give us that boldness and help us to pray the promises. It's in your name, Jesus, that we pray.